Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming. We are from. My name is Josh Farella from Coconino County Cooperative Extension. I work with Hattie Braun. I'll let her introduce herself here.
Hi, everyone. And oh, sorry, Josh.
Go ahead. Sorry.
So we're in two separate locations right now. So if we interrupt each other, that's okay. But I'm Hattie Braun. I'm the County Director for Coconino Cooperative Extension, and we've been invited here to talk to you about emergency preparedness for livestock and pets. And that's, Danica knows Cooperative Extension, and that's why she reached out to her. And I'm just really happy that she, wanted to introduce Cooperative Extension to this community. So I am the county director, but I also run the Master Gardener program, and I also work with invasive plant problems. And this afternoon, I'll actually be looking at some trees that have suffered some fire damage. I'm throwing it back to you, Josh.
So yeah, we're going to go over some emergency preparedness for livestock and pets. A lot of this experience will come from work we do with 4-H positive youth development and other similar programs. And we'll have a list of resources at the end for folks to follow up on if they want to. So overall, we're going to talk about two main themes here. The first is defensibility. The second is mobility. Defensibility is obviously going to be beforehand. How do we prepare for emergency situations? And that's going to be both in maintaining properties, vehicles, things like that. Basically taking proactive steps that we can do beforehand to make a situation more manageable or safer. And then later we're going to talk about mobility, which is in the moment. What do we do? How do we get out of the situation? Defensibility is also a part of practicing for that moment. So in Northern Arizona, we deal with a lot of different risks. I think the main ones people are focused on right now are wildfire and the flooding that comes in post-fire burn scars. We're just going to take a little bit of a step out. We'll talk more about that specifically later, since I know it's on everybody's mind in this fire season. But we also have other things that we really need to prepare for. So the snow and the cold, October through April, we can have cold snaps, severe weather events in that way. And then also the heat and monsoonal storms can be very strong winds associated with those. Things that we might not necessarily prepare for, but in the moment that they happen, we might regret that. And then another thing that has been happening, especially in like California and Nevada, we've seen utility outages. Some of these are planned and some of these are not. The increased fire risks, sometimes there's a planned outage, and that can really wrench in people's plans, especially with the heat we're experiencing this summer. And especially if there's a tree that falls on a power line or things like that, we really need to be prepared for those moments with some backups, planning ahead. So defensibility, this day-to-day management again. So for livestock, this is going to be a lot of the basics. So clean water, coops. We're going to need shade, shelter, access to veterinary care. We always want to have a minimum of 3 days of food, water, and medications. That's just a good number in case we do experience indirect effects of these sort of emergencies, these climate disasters, things like that. So if a road washes out, or if we do have a fire and road down, we need to have 3 days of that absolute necessary items on hand for livestock and pets both. Preventative property care is a big one, and this is going to be utilities, structures, the landscape itself, the things that we use to become mobile, vehicles, trailers. We all want these things in good working order, and that's oil changes, airing up the tires, all of the basic things that we sort of put to the back of our minds until we maybe take it into a mechanic, and then it's like, oh, well, I have a laundry list now. We want to actually start doing those things beforehand so that they're easy and we're not having to deal with them in the moment. And then good record keeping is going to be essential for this as well. So we need pictures of animals, paperwork, tagging, any distinct markings. Taking selfies with animals is a good practice so that we make sure we have clear ownership. Sometimes in the chaos, animals get out and we won't exactly know where they are. In the tunnel fire, for example, in northern Arizona, we had a lot of people just picking up animals that were out and about and dropping them off at Fort Tut Hill at the fairgrounds. And so those ownership indicators are going to be really important in making sure you can get animals back after the event. So when we have a heightened risk from the defensibility standpoint, this is going to be the fire season, for example. Right now we're in heightened risk in northern Arizona. It's very, very dry. It's very, very windy. We're going to be in the 90s to low 100s all week across most of the Colorado Plateau. So we really need to start thinking about hardened shelter. So what is this? It's going to be a barn, closed shed. In times of cold, that's going to be a place where we can somewhat climate control it as well. Heaters, lamps, misters, electrolytes for animals. Again, 3 days of food, water, necessary medications need to be ready to go. So right now, it's a good idea to actually have a trailer that's in position where your animals need to be located and actually have that stuff on board and have everything ready, because when events happen, like a wildfire, for example, our actual time for preparation can be very, very short. And so we need to take out all of the preparation steps. And again, think about this for both winter and summer or other times of year for flooding events, things like that. The time can be very, very short. So cut out all of the beforehand steps that you can to make sure that your response time is going to be quick. So this is the one that's really on folks' minds lately, is really planning for wildfire and flooding. So there's some general strategies that can be used that aren't directly related to livestock, but very good for overall defensibility. So fire-resistant building materials, fuel management from 0 to 100 feet. This is from your gutters out 100 feet away from your house. So making sure that all of the flammable things are taken care of, that your gutters are clean, that there aren't any pine needles on your roofs, and then have an evacuation plan. So we want to be aware of our local organizations, equestrian centers, fairgrounds, humane societies, animal shelters, things like that. We have lists of these actually later on that you can reach out to directly if you want. Transportation, we want to be ready to move, as I said. So have your stuff ready, packed, your 3 days of food ready to go. And then if you don't have a trailer or if you don't have the things you need to transport an animal, make sure you're working with neighbors, folks that have resources, and have a plan ready to go. If you can't get animals out, make sure that you have an area that you predetermined that you're going to use, clear as much of the area around it so that you can hopefully have a safe environment, and then enough feed for 2 to 3 days. Don't rely on solar powered equipment, mechanical equipment. If things go south, you want to have as few things that can go wrong as possible. And then you're going to need to make more than one plan, because if things go sideways, you want to be able to adapt in a timely fashion and move forward quickly in a way that's going to protect your family and your livestock and pets. This link right here is, I think everybody in northern Arizona at this point has heard of Firewise. This is just a very basic fact sheet. This website is very, very useful. With flooding events, it's really important, again, to plan ahead. So that's going to be sandbagging, digging culverts if we need to. If you're in a high-risk area, we really need to think about managing the hydrology, so that channelizing drainages, working on check dams. Check dams can be really effective at not stopping these floods, but just slightly changing the direction. And that can be the difference between having a house and not having a house. And then FEMA flood insurance is also a really important one. So do your research on that. Make sure that the insurance you have is up to date, and also that if you are eligible, that flood insurance is something you can purchase. If you go through a broker, generally this costs around $100 a month. I have this actually on my house, and it adds an extra layer of resilience. The main thing with livestock, and a lot of times people don't think about this with larger animals, but you can practice with them, and you definitely should, right? So you can, you want to avoid doing something for the first time in a stressful situation, right? So that's not really a good option for success, to basically need a large animal to behave in a specific way, or need a chicken, to be handled for, the first or second or fifth time. This is something that really needs to be practiced. So again, we're planning out what we need, having multiple plans. We're planning out how to act, but then we also need to be doing that practice, that dry run, to build muscle memory, and also positive reinforcement. This is a really powerful training tool where you can actually encourage animals to really want to do what you're asking of them. So if, hopefully a lot of you are familiar with your local 4-H programs. This is something that our youth demonstrate all of the time. Kids will take livestock into a show ring, and they'll be able to, on a lead or just with a show stick, guide these large livestock in a very specific pattern. And the animals like doing it, right? This is something that has happened where the kids are working with them over months and months to basically make their behavior predictable. And that's not a stress-free environment, right? If we go to the fair, we know that there's a lot of noise, there's loudspeakers, there's a lot of other animals. So this is something that those kids have practiced for. They practice for that stressful moment. And they've had those animals on leads regularly. They're creating these positive experiences when you have a good training session. So if an animal is being directed, you can, and they're doing well, you want to feed a high value treat. So that can be something like Nilla wafers, I hear, have a really good reputation. Sugar cubes, things like this. There's all kinds of really good nutritional supplements that you can give animals to really promote that happy thought in their head when you're asking them to do something like follow on a lead into a trailer. I really encourage folks to YouTube positive reinforcement training. There's a ton of really good information out there, and it's a really powerful mechanism for controllable and predictable behaviors in large livestock. I'll pass it over to you, Hattie.
Okay, well, I think I can just say everything that Josh said, except maybe bring it down to a smaller scale. So we also want to think about our pets and our planning. And, when you're planning, making your emergency plan, have them in there. And, you often will think about your children and maybe some of, your possessions. But one study found that when given a choice between their own personal safety or abandoning their household pets, a significant number of people will choose to risk their lives in order to remain with their pets. So, that's really tough, and it's tough, if somebody has to come into that emergency situation and help out. But if you have a plan, maybe you'll be able to take them with you. And so your emergency plan should include a safe place to take the pets. So this is a picture of my daughter and our giant dog. And most hotels will not take a dog that is that size. So at my house, I live in West Flagstaff. When we were in the set situation last year, I did think about, well, what am I going to do with my dog? Where can I take her? And I was thinking, okay, we have a camper. She can come with us. Or where are we going to camp? And so I was actually calling friends on the east side of town, like, where are we going to go? Because it's unlikely I'm going to be able to find a place that I can take this giant dog. And I also, I mean, this is, it wasn't part of the plan, but in the back of my mind, I actually brought her to work, which is not an option that everybody has. But, think about, where are you going to go? Okay, next slide, please, Josh. So, have an evacuation plan for your pet. And, just as Josh was mentioning, if there are friends or neighbors that can help you develop a buddy system. So I don't have 3 cats anymore, but I used to. And when we went through the slide fire, which was in Sedona, I went out and bought 3 cat carriers. But I was thinking, which neighbor am I going to ask to put cats in those cat carriers if I'm not home? And so, that was, I have neighbors that I can depend on, but they also want to take care of, themselves, their children, and their pets too. And so sometimes you might have to have a couple people that might be able to help. And I was thinking, can I put those cats and those cat carriers into my camper? Is that even realistic for anybody to do? But, that was the beginning of my plan of how I'm going to take care of these pets. And of course, determine the living arrangements ahead of time. If you can have your pet microchipped, that of course is really going to help in case you get separated. And of course, your local emergency management office will have more information. And I really feel like during the tunnel fire, I felt like our community really came together to help people with where they can take their pets and their livestock. And if you can build an emergency kit for your pet, we did build an emergency kit for our family. And we sort of had that idea about having one for our pet. And so when thinking about this presentation, I thought, well, I should have one for my pet too. This little website on the bottom, it is part of our resources at the end. But if you're really interested in more information about how to help your pets, www.ready.gov/pets. It has a great list of things. So next slide, please, Josh. So just a couple things to think about for your pet kit. There's lots of lists out there. Josh mentioned most of the things that you're going to need. But I want to say that this morning I was looking on chewy.com, and you can buy an emergency pet kit for $89 to $129, or you can build your own. So I would recommend starting now. And even with Amazon delivery, you might not get those products in time, if all of a sudden we have an emergency situation. But of course, sturdy leashes and harnesses and carriers, in some way to transport those pets. And it is really hard sometimes when I see reports of, somebody had an accident, or, they had to leave a situation and the gate was unlocked and their pet ran off, or, jumped out of the car or something like that, because they were really frightened. And so it is something to really think about. And, in a hurry, if you don't have a plan, you're just, I got the pet in the car. But then what happens when that animal escapes because they're really terrified, as well as you are. And of course, food and water, et cetera. And medications. We have a picture of little Cinder here, who's our co-worker's kitty, and little Cinder she has epilepsy. And so her medications are really important for her. We did have some flooding here at the extension office last year. We had 2 floods that came through, did not get into our office. It got into our parking lot, but that was from the museum fire, which was a couple years ago. And then there was this big weather event over the top of the burn scar, where our co-worker lives up the street. We're in the Sunnyside neighborhood. Her house is like right there, as in the path of the potential flooding. So she luckily was able to just say, I got to go home, take care of my kitty, take care of my house. She was able to, but sometimes you don't have, it's not as easy for you to get home. And sometimes you don't have a lot of time, as what happened with the tunnel fire. There just was very little time to react. So, have that stuff all together. And Josh mentioned having a picture of your pet and you together, that can really help with getting you together. If for some reason you had to leave or you couldn't get home to get your pet, to get you all back together again. And then also remember those familiar items to try to make those, pets a little bit more comfortable. My cats will not be comfortable no matter what, because they think going into the carrier means going to the vet. But my dog, I've had to work with her because she needs like a comfort zone. And so for us to take her someplace in an emergency, we had to think about how can we make her comfortable? So I actually bought a special bed. And when she goes, when we go camping or if we visit somebody or, we're just out in the woods, I take that bed along and that's her bed. And so now if we're camping, I can put it in the camper and she's like, well, that's their house. That's not my house, but she knows it's her bed. And she actually is trained now to go on that bed because it's like her little safe place. And she, in an emergency, we're going to be upset. She's going to react to us too. So anything that you can do to help your pet, travel better and make it a little bit easier on you will really help. And of course, treats really, really help. Maybe not the vanilla wafers like the pigs like, but there are other treats. Anyway, next slide, please, Josh. And so I was just, reading about other things that you can do. And I saw this message about a rescue sticker alert, which I think is an excellent idea. I have not done this. I'm going to go do something so I can have something to let somebody know if there's a pet in my house. I have a large dog. What if, the dog got out and there were firemen that were trying to save my house? That might not be a good situation, but I could certainly get one of these stickers and include what pets are in the house. And something about them. And I could also say there are no pets in this house. So that might help the people that were trying to help my property. And this could be in a fire situation or maybe even a flooding situation. And I thought that's something that's just really easy for us to do to help our emergency workers that are trying to help us. Okay, next slide, please. So that's about all I have to say about emergency preparedness. Josh, would you like to make any more comments?
No, so we did want to share just in general some of the programming that Extension offers. The slide after this is full of useful links, but we just did want to make sure that you all knew that we do offer a diversity of programs. 4-H youth development is one that has a ton of variety. We do a lot of the traditional programming, livestock, shooting sports education, things like that. We also have a really cool blacksmithing program going right now, and lots of different camp opportunities for folks like military youth and other things across the state. And then Hattie has a lot of really interesting stuff going on as well. So go ahead, Hattie.
But Josh, I do want to mention that 4-H isn't only about raising livestock. There's the shooting sports, there's blacksmithing. There are many other projects that youth can work on because not everybody has that space to have a large animal. There is the KV group, which is, I had to learn about what a KV was, guinea pigs and something else, maybe something small. There's also rabbits, there's poultry. So, and I kind of like the idea of having, you could be part of a 4-H program with a guinea pig and live in an apartment. So I think that's kind of like a neat way for youth to become involved with 4-H without, living out on land where you can have large animals. I do run the Master Gardener program, and we do have an online version that will be offered in the fall. You can contact me. There's my contact information if you're interested in it. The online version works well for people that are working, such as the people that might be watching this recording later on, because you do that on your own time. It's you have weekly videos that you have to look at. And then we will hopefully have an in-person class next spring. We didn't have an in-person class this in 2022. That was the first time since since 1991 that we haven't had an in-person Master Gardener class. And so our program, our Master Gardeners and myself, were available for a variety of garden topic presentations. So, we welcome requests. We don't know everything about everything, but we have a lot of Master Gardeners that have a lot of knowledge and are available to give talks to organizations, or if you have a want to start a little community garden at your office or something like that, we can give talks on that. We also have a website that our Master Gardeners built, and it's for invasive plant information. It also has weedy plants on there, but we call it NAZ, invasiveplants.org. It's for all of Northern Arizona. And if you have problems with weedy plants, you can get all kinds of information there. There's about, I think, 47 plants that are on the list now, and you can find out how to identify and how to manage those problem plants. And then I'll throw it back to you, Josh. We have one new program that's getting started this year.
Yeah, so we got a grant from the United States Department of Agriculture and NEFA, and that's basically offering free professional development opportunities for K-8 teachers. And there's also going to be continuing education credits for those folks if they want them. And we're basically providing some professional development work, helping teachers bring agriculture into their classroom. And then we're going on these field trips for a few days where folks can actually have these immersive experiences with people working in the industry. I think our first one, we're going to be going to Yavapai College. We're going to be looking at hydroponic systems, and then we're going to go to some farms in the area where we have cut flower operations and irrigation, and then actually do a day-long workshop where we're developing and adapting curriculum that fits specifically into teachers' classrooms. And these events are fully funded. We shouldn't have any money coming out of the pockets of participants for that. So if you know folks that would like to join in that, please reach out to myself. That's my email address right there, and we can get you involved. And then we have, this is just kind of a short list of what we would call essential resources. A lot of these we talked about in the presentation. We also will be sharing this slide set with Danica. So if you'd like to follow up on any of these further, feel free to reach out to her or myself, and we can send you a copy of this. Thanks very much, everybody.